second.
What is going on, Belly Up Sports fam? We are back with another episode of the Midweek Midrange with some familiar faces. Chris, I'll start with you. How are you doing today?
Oh man, it's hot as hell in California, and as a Knicks fan, I am happy to be on the other side of the country looking at their deals this week.
Ooh, Knicks fans, we got to talk more in a second. I'm excited to hear that.
It's a rough one, man.
And a team that's been a little quieter in the last 72 hours, Denver, or I guess I should just say the greater Colorado, the greater state of Colorado. How are we doing, Jamaal? Things going okay?
Yeah, things are finally starting to cool down here. It's been like mid to high 80s to 90s here, so it's just been like cooking.
Yeah, I think we all can relate to cooking. Speaking of cooking, I haven't talked to you two as show regulars since the end of the finals, I believe. Let me ask, first of all, Chris, talk to me about how did you take in the NBA Finals? I mean, obviously Giannis was cooking in many ways, even if we talk about bags and this, that, and the other thing. How did you take in the NBA Finals? Was there anything that stuck out to you just to look back?
Well, I'll tell you what, it was an awesome finals. Like Giannis, that was such an amazing performance. For me, it was rough just because like last time I was on the podcast, I had a lot of Bobby Portis slander. A lot. and but I'm not going to run away from it. I'm going to stand on that corner because, 2 games doesn't make a career.
It made a hometown hero, though. He's got a new – he doesn't have to buy a drink or a steak in Milwaukee for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I respect Bobby Portis because, like, my man's willing to, like, throw down in a fight any day of the week. Like, just ask Miricic's jaw line for when they practice together. So, like, if I'm in like a barroom fight, I want like Bobby Portis on my side like all day. If I'm putting together a basketball team, finals were nice. You have the memories, you have the free beers in Milwaukee and brats. Enjoy the Bucks.
Enjoy the Bucks. And he did. We'll talk more about a lot of these teams later, but he did sign a 2-year deal to stay with the Bucks after initially turning down the extension. Jamaal, I hadn't talked to you. I mean, I hadn't talked to you on the show because we didn't have this the week after. How did you take in the NBA Finals?
Well, I'm going to disagree with a lot of the fans who said this wasn't really a great finals. I think it's one of the best finals of recent memory that we've had. I mean, it's 2 new teams, both who haven't been in the finals in close to 30 years or so, and they ended up turning out a great performance on both sides. But to piggyback on Chris's on his point, the performance by Giannis, not just the final game, but throughout the entire series, most of us didn't even know he was even going to play after the hyperextended knee. So to see him perform on that big stage and then to cap it off with that 50 points, it was just incredible.
Yeah. To your point, Jamaal, too, sorry for jumping, but like, it wasn't like one of the best things about this final that like, I think everyone had an emotional attachment to like both teams. Yeah, like you cared about Paul getting his ring, like even though like the man has been known to like punch a guy in the nuts, like he is like arguably the greatest point guard ever, or definitely like the top 3. It'd be nice to see him get a ring, and after everything like Giannis has done, like staying by Milwaukee, standing for Milwaukee, like it like just like you felt really good kind of seeing somebody who has gone against the grain of staying in a city become a champion for a smaller market too.
Oh yeah.
And it's 2 unique teams in the way they did it, because it was Phoenix was good, scrappy, young, 8-0 in the bubble, and then they add Chris Paul, and I was like, whoa, right? Or you don't see the superstar in the last 10 years, 12 years. You don't see the superstar like Giannis stay in Milwaukee as like they were just different teams than we see, both literally, like Jamaal said, and in their construction. I gotta say, I really enjoyed the finals. I liked I liked watching the back and forth, and I think that the chess moves that weirdly Bud played well, Bud doesn't really do that very well. I think that the trick this year was really about like who watched games and who didn't watch. Because if you didn't watch games, you were, well, how could the Nets not go all the way? Or it's like, well, because they lost 1.5 guys and that was all they had, right? Like if you were just following headlines and you weren't watching games, it might not have been as enticing. The other big NBA thing that has happened since I saw you guys both on the show was the NBA draft. And besides the fact that the Houston Rockets obviously won the NBA draft, because that's how things go, Jamaal, talk to me about what was your take on draft night? Outside of some cool suits, what'd you see?
Well, it definitely, like I said before, the last time I was on the show, I was really interested in seeing how some of these teams were going to view some of the G League prospects. How are they going to view, like, in the short amount of time that they had with the league? I want to see, well, who was going to take the big gamble? Who was going to take the big risk? And apparently there were a few teams who wanted to do that. Of course, Jalen Green, you had a couple other big name prospects. So I was really intrigued by how most of these teams were going to view them. And apparently they had a favorable enough opinion to draft them as high as they did. Jalen Green being the biggest one.
Yeah, and I, as selfishly as a Rockets fan, love watching Jalen Green. He's explosive. He's fun. He's got charisma. He's got beautiful hair. Just a great pickup. No, but analytically speaking, I do like the way that they're building this team, where he's the explosive athlete at the rim, and Kevin Porter Jr. is more of a crafty guy, and then Christian Wood as a pick and pop, pick and roll. I like what they're doing. But Chris, I rambled on about the Rockets. They weren't the only team to draft last week. What'd you take in about the draft?
I think the biggest story of the draft was always going to be the Warriors, just because, if they're able to, put all their assets together and get another star to go with their big three, and it's going to be something. And I think, it'll be interesting to see, because, Kuminga fell so far compared to where he was a few months ago. I mean, 7th isn't bad, but everyone thought this was a big 5 originally. So I wonder what people think of him and Moody, and if they're going to be able to package him with Wiseman and picks to get more, because it's really going to be that will really swing the balance of power in the NBA if they're able to pull it off. It'll be interesting.
So I want to hear because I think the Warriors draft is interesting as well, because I'm not one to think they're just punting on the last couple years of Steph and Clay and those guys, but they did. Interestingly and uniquely, just go best player available, right? They didn't get a trade off on the picks. We can surmise what might have been happening behind the scenes. But they didn't get a trade off, so they just went best player available. And there's one train of thought that's like the best asset available, so you want to keep on trading it, or keep it for value later. And there's one train of thought that's like that's also what they did with Wiseman last year, and had Clay not hurt his knee and Achilles and so on in the last couple of years. Who knows how the Wiseman thing might have panned out differently. What do you think, after seeing the 2 picks, Golden State's going to do with Moody and Kuminga?
It just feels like they are going to be hunting for that 4th superstar. And really it's like it's really like a superstar 3.5, because Draymond's can still bring it defensively. I think he's actually become a little underrated defensively recently. And for whatever reason, when it is late in the shot clock on a big shot, he will hit a 3 and then talk shit to the other bench like he's Steph. Yeah. The rest of the time he's unfortunately, from a scoring standpoint, become a complete zero. So if you can get those guys with some of the additions they made, like Porter on the minimum, that kind of becomes a team that can go toe-to-toe and potentially become a title contender again.
Yeah, I think Draymond's game is interesting because he's really at his best offensively when he hits shots when he hits shots. Obviously, that's always great. But, when he's doing the Ben Simmons thing, he scores nothing but creates a lot of points, right? I think it's interesting. There are reports early on in the Olympic camp that he was doing the most recruiting of anyone. There's also a very notably not so happy player there from Portland named Dame Lillard, right? And Dame Lillard is from Oakland, wears 0 because it looks like an O for Oakland. There's some ties there.
And And Dre also, like, he's a hell of a recruiter. He's the one that got Durant. Like,
he's the one that had the emotional phone call for whatever that athletic report was, right?
Sitting in his car, like, past 2 a.m. West Coast.
And for whatever, I mean, that sad phone call worked.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that works out. Maybe that's his secret sauce. That's the thing that he really brings to the table. I don't mean to move on past that too much, but we did do a big mock draft, single mock, and laugh at how I was about 50% in the first round and even worse in the second as far as my picks go. You can go back and watch the mock draft from last week. We had a finals breakdown with the Bucks fan and stuff like that the week before. But tonight,
one thing, Parker, like, no one can give you grief for that, for having that like mock draft wrong. Like, I feel like if we go back and like look at that draft, it's kind of be like a crime scene board in a police station, like just with like string going from place to place, like not understanding how, like, like Primo's going 12 and things like that.
Yeah. I was pretty good through pick 15. Yeah. And then the wheels fell off. To be fair, I had one of the ones I had wrong in the first 15 was Alperen Sengun, and then Houston trades to get him at 16. And that really threw a lot of because anyway, I had Oklahoma City doing a whole lot of different stuff, and then I'm not drafting at 16. The last 72 hours have been dominated by a different time of roster construction. We're talking about free agency, right? And so we're going to do some hot tea, cold brew topics and looking at free agency. Now, hot tea, cold brew is brought to you by Yeti Cups, coolers, and koozies. Yeti's the shop, the go-to shop for keeping things hot or cold, just like this free agency season. Yeti is based at Austin, Texas. Check out the links on our social media handles for all your insulated needs for tailgating, camping, and daily life. Yeti is built for the wild. And so, as we look at some of these wild stories in the NBA, it feels like this every year, where like the first 72 hours is boom, 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 and like it all happens. It feels like they clearly talked about this ahead of time. Like, we're gonna get to the Heat later, but like Kyle Lowry posting on his Instagram that he's going to the Heat within minutes of, like, that deal did not get worked out right then, right? Like he knew that was happening in the days before. And so all of a sudden it just hits, takes a little, hits, and we're kind of, I think, past the bulk of it. Although with our luck, something will pop right after we're done recording. Hot tea, cold brew. I'll start with Jamaal. Hot tea, cold brew. After free agency, the Chicago Bulls will be in the Eastern Conference's top 4. They'll have a home playoff series.
Ooh, man, top 4. That's really asking a lot, because you still have Philly, Brooklyn. You still have the Knicks, who had a top 4 seed. You can't forget about Boston either. So right for now, I will say cold brew, because I want to see how this group kind of gels together. Because you got DeMar DeRozan and Lonzo Ball along with Zach LaVine. You got close to the same type of player for all 3 of those guys. And I just wonder, can those 3 really mix together with their young nucleus? So Kobe White. They also got Dosunmu, who I think was a really good pick for Chicago as well. I want to see how these guys work as far as cohesion. And it's kind of a stretch to say that they'll be a top 4 team, but hey, I didn't think the Knicks would be a top 4 team this past season. So you just don't know.
I want to ask Chris too before I jump in. Chris, hot tea, cold brew. The Chicago Bulls have a home playoff series, be a top 4 seed in the East.
Unless there's an injury, no. They definitely improved this year, but at the end of the day, Zach LaVine is 30 points a game, or 27 points a game this year. Amazing player. He has won nothing in this league. I love the Lonzo Ball signing. I love the Caruso signing. It's definitely going to improve their defense, along, with Patrick Williams taking a step forward in year 2. But the East is that top 4, that top 5 is really tight. Atlanta is going to have a full year of Nate McMillan. Mm-hmm. We got to see what happens with Ben Simmons, but even if you go a little bit into the season with Simmons, I still think Philly, if Embiid is healthy, is a top 4 team. Miami's stronger, and development isn't always linear. Hero has a chance to grow more. Or Duncan Robinson, even though that deal was expensive, has a chance to grow more. Bam has a chance to grow more. The Bucks are going to be feeling themselves this year, have that championship glow, and like the Nets, like everything they did in the draft and free agency, like they can support now when one of their big three, which most likely will happen, will either be injured or if Kyrie goes on like a vision quest somewhere.
Well, and I think that's what's interesting here is I don't get what the Bulls are doing because I agree with both y'all. I don't think any of the moves they made get them in the top 4 in the East. I guess technically making the playoffs, like they were right at the fringe of the play-in, and so making the playoffs would be a step in the right direction. But this seems like a really expensive way to do it with a lot of guards, right? Kobe White still on the roster. He's kind of worked his way into the doghouse, it looks like. He didn't play a lot of minutes as the season went on. Lonzo Ball, I like. I actually like with Zach LaVine a lot. He can play on ball, off ball, as he showed with Point Zion some in New Orleans. DeMar DeRozan seems like an odd fit. I guess theoretically I see the fit with DeRozan and Vucevic, but I don't see the fit with DeRozan and LaVine because to me the space that DeRozan occupies is kind of where LaVine's trying to drive to, where Vuce can space the floor a little bit. Caruso, I think that the 4-year deal is a big deal for a guy that I see it as like a 6-man defensive guy. I don't know what to make of what they did, and I feel like it's a really expensive way to get a 7 seed.
It definitely is, and also like not just even from a financial standpoint, but from an asset standpoint. Going back to the Vooch trade, like they've traded a ton of firsts now. They have given a lot of their future assets. Like right now, their biggest asset to trade is really in the eye of the beholder of Kobe White. I like the Caruso signing just because it's not like $9 million a year isn't that much, and I think overall he'll make the flow of the team better. I love the Lonzo signing. I wish, as a Knicks fan, I would rather have him than Fournier or Kemba. But like Lonzo, like he's proven now that he can shoot threes. He is a great facilitator as a secondary ball handler, and he brings defense. So I think those two guard signings really help LaVine from a standpoint of people who can make an extra pass to him and also take the best guard on the opposing team. So like Zach doesn't have to pretend to play D now. But
right.
Like,
no,
yeah,
I get that fit. DeRozan's weird though.
Oh yeah, especially for that money, it's nuts.
Jamaal, you didn't think that they were getting to the top 4 either. Can you help us make sense of what they're doing, or are they a little lost?
Well, I think it's kind of a sign. It could be a sign of desperation from the front office because we really have not seen Chicago really do anything like really the last couple of years. I mean, of course, 2017 they nearly knocked out the 1 seed, but then Rondo goes down and they go up to nothing. So I think they're really trying to show the fans that, hey, we're here to try to win. We're trying to make moves and show that we're trying to be at least in contention in the East. Is this the way to do it? I'm not sure. And you really can't tell unless they really start to make headway at the start of the year. But I think the pressure is really going to be on them for them to start the year, especially now that you have the Bucks, who are the reigning champs. Brooklyn's going to come back hungry. The Knicks feel like they are somewhat back. Remains to be seen, but there's still a lot of movement to make in the East right now.
Y'all mentioned the Knicks are back. Chris is on for a short while. He's a Knicks fan, and so I want to get into them next. My hot tea cold brew question for the Knicks, Chris, is hot tea cold brew. They improved their roster. They added Kemba Walker, Evan Fournier. I believe I saw Derrick Rose as well. Re-signed Nerlens Noel. I think, and then like Taj Gibson, I think I missed. Did they get better? Because they had a surprising year a year ago, and better would be getting really good. So did they get better?
So yes, they definitely are better today than they were at the end of the season. And I think their draft picks, Grime and Deuce, like they're going to add, value to the team. That being said, like kind of what I was saying before, the Hawks are going to be better this year. Miami's going to be better this year. So I don't think they're going to be a top 4 seed. I think the thing that's frustrating to me is, as a Knicks fan, we've been in the wilderness for so long where I was always fine with them tanking, especially this year with how good the draft was. They went the opposite way, and I was like, okay, well, they're going to go big star hunting and prove the team become a stable organization. And like there was even a way for next summer to, trade for a star like Dame and also sign somebody like Beal or Levine. And now they kind of gave that away with like these multi-year signings. Like, it's frustrating too because like some of them show like a little lack of creativity. Like Nerlens, resigning for 2 years with a third team option. Surely it's going to be a 2-year deal, but like I would have rather taken Favors from the Jazz and got a first round pick to add to the assets. They have not hamstrung themselves completely from getting a star now. They still have a lot of assets. It was smart to push one of the Dallas picks into the future by trading with Charlotte in the draft. But they definitely made it harder. And Burks in a vacuum, fine signing. Rose is a little scary going 2+1 with his body. Fournier, I mean, I guess we'll see. Like he had like a rough time in Boston, but he also had COVID.
You don't like Olympic Fournier, the way you set in France on fire. It's not doing it for you.
I've been a Frankie Smokes fan, seeing what he's been doing for France in the Olympics and the World Cup for 4 years. Has it translated to a 5-point a game career with the Knicks and not not having a qualifying offer. So it's cool. Dame looks like crud in the Olympics too. So it's like.
What I'm hearing is Chris hates France, and I'm joking. Jamaal,
my girlfriend and I are going. We're going to hopefully do the Boris D out eating tour. So.
Well, I don't know how much basketball we'll be playing after that. Jamaal, talk us through the Knicks. Hot tea, cold brew. Did they get better, or they got hot tea, cold brew? They got better.
So I will say they did get better because anytime when you can replace Elfrid Payton and the lack of scoring that he had in the playoffs, I think is a big bonus. The Knicks, to me, they're kind of in a weird spot. Like they had great success, but now I want to see what do they do with that success? Do they take it forward or do they go backwards? These deals tell me that they want to try to at least show the fans that once again, like, hey, we're trying to build something here. We don't want to go too big star hunting because remember that got them burnt a couple years ago when they tried to do that. But now I think Randall's going to come back a little bit hungrier after his debacle against Atlanta. I think the signing of Kemba Walker will be huge. Whether he stays healthy or not will be another question, because I think now you don't have to play those many minutes now. Hopefully, if Walker stays healthy. I do like the Alex Burks signing. I think that was a big deal. I'm a little bit split on Noel and Gibson because even though they're great defenders, they kind of hurt you offensively. And then Fournier, I don't know which one you're going to get, the one from Boston or the one from France. If that remains, but
yeah,
I do like the moves that the Knicks are doing. Whether they can get a big star down the road, we'll see. But right now, I say as of today, the Knicks are better with these moves.
My thing I think is interesting is they got Kemba Walker and Derrick Rose, who in 2010 or 11, if I'd have been like Kemba Walker and Derrick Rose are the same player, you'd have slapped me in the face. Like that before injuries is not the case. But now they're both somewhat hobbled point guards that probably shouldn't play more than 60 games a year. Probably should be playing closer to 50 and probably playing closer to 25 minutes a night. And they can score in the like mid-range area. And if they collapse your defense, they can find the open guy and force rotation. To me, they're very similar in 2021. And getting both was interesting to me, except that one of the things they have that's similar is that they can't play all the time. And so there's some rotation aspect there, I guess.
It's interesting, right? Like to your point, like if you look at the Knicks center rotation, the guys Mitch and Nerlens are essentially, they're not exactly the same player, but they do a lot of similar things. It seems like Thibs has like a particular, I want this out of this position. I want this out of this position.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Thibs also, he wants the same things. I was going to go to, you get both of these guys because there's a real possibility Thibs runs one of them into the ground, right? So if you got two of them, they can share that load a little bit better. I don't think it's awful. I do think it's. I guess you have to yin and yang, kind of to give and take in negotiations, but the years on Rose is interesting to me. I like the money with Walker though. They got a buyout from Walker, got bought out in Oklahoma City, so they really got that kind of the cheap.
I like the Walker signing too. It's like, do you guys? Let me ask you guys a question, like just your opinions. Like, so free agency moves really quick. Before the Walker signing happened, everyone thought the Knicks offseason was a dud. Now that they've signed Walker, do you guys still think that?
No, I don't.
So that's where I was going to come down on this, Chris, is that I think they did get better, but I also feel like they probably, if you look at their roster, overachieved a year ago. And I don't know if they actually will net more wins, higher seeds, etc. Does that make sense? Like, I think that this year's team beats last year's team, or like at this point of the offseason versus this point of the offseason a year ago, right?
Yeah.
I just don't know that they actually get higher than the 4th seed in the East and take a game off of Atlanta. Like I don't know that they can do any of that any differently. Frankly, we talk about other Eastern Conference teams getting better. Like, they may be better and get a worse seed, and that doesn't mean they weren't better. That means the competition got better, right?
Yeah.
And that's a shame because they'll look worse, even though they probably just overachieved a year ago.
Yeah, it sadly is the case. Because like you said, there's going to be a lot of teams out there in the East that they're going to have to compete with, including that Atlanta team, who I think is people are really sleeping on after the job that Nick McMillan done this year. It's going to be tough for the Knicks, but knowing Tibbs and the work that he did this previous year, I'm not going to count him out just yet. Although I still think he still robbed that Coach of the Year award.
You're a Monty guy. You're a Monty guy. I like Monty a lot. I think the deal there is weird that Chris Paul might hurt him. Anyway, that's not here or there. The next hot tea cold brew is back to Jamaal. We're gonna throw it Jamaal. Hot tea cold brew. The Lakers have had the best signings in the NBA thus far. Before you give your answer, to refresh, they got Carmelo Anthony. They brought back Dwight Howard for a 3rd time. Trevor Ariza comes back to town. Malik Monk, Wayne Ellington, Kent Bazemore, Kendrick Nunn, Taylor Horton Tucker to a multi-year deal for a chunk of money. The big one also was trading for Russell Westbrook. I'd be remiss to not include that. It was a trade, not a signing, but I'd include him in this as well. Jamaal, your thoughts?
I'm very split on this. Like, I have to say lukewarm, because on one hand, you do have some of the best signings out there, but at the same time, look at the average age of this roster. It's almost 33 years old, which would be the oldest in NBA history. Like, it makes you wonder exactly what are the Lakers doing here. Like, I know they're in win now mode, but at the same time, like, you got to preserve some kind of youth. Like, I do like the Taylor Horton Tucker signing. I do like that deal. But some of these other deals are kind of head scratchers, like Wayne Ellington. I think maybe, with his shooting, you can probably get away with that. But Kent Bazemore, I don't understand that one. Dwight Howard, I don't know why he left town in the first place for a 2nd time. I still don't get that. And Melo, look, I'm split on Melo, because he started his career here, and then he's bounced around everywhere. So it would kind of be weird and strange just to see him in a Lakers uniform, like it was when he was in Portland. But I just don't know if this would be enough to get them over the top in the West, because you got Golden State possibly getting Clay back at a good, healthy minimum. You still have the Suns, who are still raring to go. Who knows what Denver's going to do? I like their free agent signings, but we don't know their real strength until Murray comes back. And then you got to worry about, okay, well, what the Clippers are going to do, because Kawhi Leonard still has not made his decision. So it's been an effective offseason for the Lakers, but it's also been kind of strange as well.
You forgot to mention that Jalen Green will be the first rookie to win the MVP. No, I'm joking.
Don't.
No. I think it's interesting. The Lakers clearly got guys LeBron thinks are good at basketball, and I don't mean that to say that they're players are bad at basketball. It's just that's clearly the mood they went to. Chris, hot tea, cold brew. The Lakers had the best signings in the NBA in the last week.
They definitely did not have the best signings. Like I think but with the caveat, their offseason may not be over because they do have Bird Race on Schroeder, and obviously it's not looking good right now. They turned down $84 million, but
it's a bad move.
When betting on yourself goes wrong.
Yeah. Oh man, going on Indeed.com, my friend. Get on your LinkedIn, but it's he is still an asset at the moment. So I want to see what they do with him and his bird rights. I think I love Russ. This is going to be really interesting how it all works together because he's the worst high volume shooter in NBA history. I love the Monk signing. I love bringing THT back just at minimum as an asset or to kind of grow and fill the Caruso minutes. I think Carmelo at 15 to 20 minutes a game is good. Like he's a very good stretch four, and if you're going small ball with AD at the 5, that's great. Dwight, whatever, fine. He's
whatever.
He's definitely serviceable, but he seems like a real pain in the ass. I think Wayne Ellington's fine too. I think though the defense is going to be an issue. Ariza seems washed. Bazemore is going to Lakers to try to bet on himself to kind of reestablish his value. It feels like there is some shooting. I think it's really just going to come down to LeBron and AD's health, how Russ fits in, which at the moment doesn't seem great, and what kind of defense they have. I think the one benefit, and I think this was a mistake last year, is LeBron has I think we all know LeBron really cares about his legacy. He really went hard for the MVP last year, even though they were just coming off a short off season because of the bubble. If he gets his minutes down to 30 to 32 game in the regular season to preserve Russ for the postseason, and Russ can carry those non-AD LeBron minutes, I think the Russ trade will overall be a success because you'll have a healthier LeBron and AD in the postseason.
So I think that's got to be entirely. I'm lukewarm with this as well. I think Jamaal said lukewarm. I think that's what I'm going to steal.
Yeah.
I think the Russ trade has to entirely be preservation of LeBron, because if LeBron were 6 inches shorter, he'd be a lot like Russell Westbrook, right?
Yeah.
What I think is interesting here is, frankly, first of all, I'm a history teacher, right? But if you were to take this team back in time and say, hey, it is 2012, you've got Carmelo, you've got Russ, you got LeBron, you got Dwight, and you got, at the time, the best kid in college basketball and Anthony Davis, I'd punch you in the throat. There's no way that team should have
the Avengers right there.
Right. That is legitimately all of the chaos, everything at once. That's Russell Westbrook right before they go to the finals. That's Carmelo Anthony on the Knicks run. That's Heat LeBron. That's Dwight Howard 2 years up of his finals run. That's 3 years. That's the peak. In 2021, right, just flip the digits around. This team is old. And LeBron's got words for us when we say this, right? What was the tweet that I think it got taken down? Anyway, keep talking about my squad, our personnel, ages, the way he plays, he stays injured. We're past our prime in this league, et cetera, et cetera. So do me one favor, please. Please get the same narrative energy when it all begins, all I ask. I don't disagree, and I'm sure that is a chance for LeBron to put a chip on his shoulder. And chip on his shoulder, LeBron, as we saw when he got injured the first year in LA, and then came back with a vengeance, right? That is a real thing. I just don't see some of it fit on the floor. And I don't mean to say that it's weird. I think the lesser name signings are the guys that actually fit better because this is selfishly as a Rockets guy. But when they came through Houston, I know we have not had a guy like LeBron James come through Houston. But when Carmelo and Russell and Dwight, frankly, as well, came through Houston, they each separately had issues not being the guy, right? The Athletic report, when the Houston thing blew up and everyone wanted to leave town all of a sudden, Russell Westbrook was not happy playing off of the ball. You ain't getting the ball when LeBron's bringing it up. right? Like you can back cut for a dunk, like that's sweet, but you are not bringing it up. Carmelo Anthony did not like being the sixth man. I don't think he's starting for this team, right? Like those kinds of things. I guess that they're older and wiser and more mature, and maybe that's what LeBron's alluding to. But when it gets to kind of crunch time or nut cutting time, like how is that going to play out? And the way it's going to play out is it's going to make me eat my words. I'm going to win a championship. Like that's the way this really goes, because I don't know, with the shooting they added in Malik Monk, the shooting they add in Wayne Ellington, even Kent Bazemore and Kendrick Nunn to an extent, right? Like those smaller names, if they'd have had shooting around a healthy AD and LeBron, I think they won it all last year. Like they might not need any of that stuff. I don't know. I hesitate to say they've had the best, but had they been healthy a year ago, it would have been like the rich get richer, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see there. I talked for a long time. Jamaal, do you have anything to add in? Because you seem to be piping in as I was going.
Yeah.
No, so it's going to be a really interesting season. I want to see how they start out right from the start of the season, because it's really because I want to see if the Lakers, will they get off to a good start? Will they middle through the season? Or if they, God forbid, get off to a slow start, will LeBron start imploding? So it's going to be something to watch.
There's nothing more fun than LeBron imploding.
That's the Knicks fan. That's the Knicks fan.
Well, no, he gets so passive aggressive. It's awesome. But I think just two things, if it's cool, Parker, before we move on. I think I forgot about the Nunn signing. That's another one. Like the Nunn and Monk signings are great, and THT is great too. I think though, I feel like Melo had to reinvent his career in Portland. I think he is all good coming off the bench, all good playing on the floor, all playing like old man Olympic Melo. Dwight, who knows what's going on in that man's head? Like he re-signed a contract with the Magic over because they gave him a bowl of candy. But he backed up Embiid last year. He's been Davis's understudy. I think he comes back knowing his role. Russ is going to be the big question. And I think that one of the reasons we all at least I love Russ, is because Russ is a force of nature, and he always feels like his will, and he is just so strong-headed in such a awesome way. It's what made him an MVP, and I think it's what is going to potentially stop him from being able to transition later in his career. I hope he comes in now realizing this is LeBron James. I may not be the best player in basketball. I might be number 2 to LeBron, and AD is a close third. In his head, I don't personally agree with that, but hopefully, and hopefully can transition. And Jamaal, it was funny you brought up the Avengers. I was kind of thinking more it's in the 90s where you if Stallone and Schwarzenegger and Elizabeth Moss were all in a movie together, but then it's this is Expendables 5 coming to
Terry Crews and Jet Li while you're at it.
Yeah, it's coming to a $15 million open because it has both a streaming release and in theaters release.
If the Lakers are Expendables, I gotta know which one is Dwight Howard.
It's probably Terry Crews.
Dwight Howard is one that gets cut in editing.
I do like what you said though, Chris, about Russell Westbrook really being the question mark, because I do think the stuff I was alluding to about Howard was years ago. Carmelo Anthony, it's been 2 or 3 years now. Russ was just last November, and I think the interesting about watching Russ, and I obviously watched him in Oklahoma City, but I watched all 82 games when he's in Houston, right? And so when he's in Houston, I noticed that you're going to win games just because he's on your roster. He there will be nights that it's the middle of January and your guys are dogging it. He's like, I'm not losing this bleeping game. He'll have those nights. He'll also have that night where he's like, I'm winning this bleeping game, and he shoots 45 shots. And it's the balance there, because both happen. And can LeBron be the guy that says, hey, pass the ball, right? Or, hey, stay in the corner when I drive, you back cut. Because that's really the interesting thing on the fit is, if there weren't that issue with the mentality thing, it fits like the small ball Rockets did around Russ, except you aren't actually small because LeBron and AD aren't small, right? They all play outside the perimeter, and the way the Rockets did it was Russ's shot chart looked like a center, right? It was all back cuts and lobs to the rim. And in this lineup, they would probably do the same thing because Davis and LeBron will start outside the perimeter as well. On defense, that's your 4 and 5. I think there's a world in which it works. I also think the bigger thing is there's a world in which it doesn't matter unless they run into the next team potentially. I'll get your take on it. Hot tea, cold brew, Chris. The Miami Heat had the best free agency period.
No, I mean, I think Miami was kind of in a position. Once you sign Jimmy Butler at the age you sign him at, you're kind of, this is like your team. And, you were going to lose the ability for the most part to get a max guy. And I think Lowry goes really well with Jimmy and Bam. He fits in Heat culture, which is cool all day long. Paying Duncan Robinson that money, it's a lot of money. Shooters get paid, but usually that hurts teams. I think everything they did is fine. I think they're going to be a good team. I think they're going to be a really competitive team. I think, at times PJ Tucker looked washed. Other times he didn't. It feels like, he's outside of corner threes. He's pretty much a zero on offense, but they are going to, they're almost like a Russell Westbrook mentality team of like, they feel they are the best team in the league. I don't think they actually are. I don't know if they're going to, if Brooklyn's healthy and the Bucks are healthy, I don't think they make the conference finals in the East, but they're going to be a team I love watching. And, I love their personality and I love everything about them. I just don't think I think, their shot was in the bubble. Unless for whatever reason, Hero, becomes the player we thought he was leaving the bubble.
Yeah. And then he brought up Brooklyn because like Brooklyn added scoring stars. Miami adds defensive-minded, gritty guys, and that's a very interesting opposite, and how they will play out. Jamaal, after looking at a number of big signings in Miami, do you think they had the best offseason or best free agency period?
So I'll say I think they made some of the best moves, but I don't think they've had the best offseason. I think the Kyle Lowry deal, was probably the steal right off the bat. I think him and Jimmy Butler in that backcourt is going to give other teams hell. Duncan Robinson, look, don't get me wrong. I know shooters are a big priority, especially in today's game, but $90 million for a shooter, that's asking a lot. So he better be dropping at least 20 plus this season. If not, they're going to have a problem. The big question mark I have with this team is what is going to happen with Victor Oladipo? Which version are we getting from him? Because when he is healthy and when he is engaged, he could be one of the best two-way players in the game. But when he's not or whatever, and he's sitting on the bench, he's not doing anything for you. So I think that's really going to be the big question mark that Miami has to answer come this offseason. Because we know what Jimmy, Bam, Kyle Lowry, and all those guys, we know what they're going to bring. What is Victor Oladipo going to bring to this team if he does come back?
Well, and so they've signed him back, but if he comes back, I guess as far as his health is a different question. I think it's interesting that as I look at their probable starting lineup, Oladipo really is probably a sixth man because he's not really the same position as they would play at Duncan Robinson, Lowry, Butler, and then I think they'd go with Tucker and Adebayo, and all of a sudden you're pulling Oladipo and Hero off the bench. I think an underrated signing for them was Markief Morris.
Yeah.
In a way that they didn't have a perimeter big besides Adebayo. So Adebayo's playing a lot of minutes, but the minutes he's not in, they've got to have the guy on the block that really kind of gets in Jimmy Butler's way, right? Jimmy Butler is not a perimeter outside shooter. He is a attack, you collapse, he kicks it, and Adebayo takes advantage of the rotation or kicks it out and eventually get the ball to a guy like a Duncan Robinson or whomever, and they shoot the ball, right?
To me, I think Markief Morris, I think he fits the Pat Riley mold.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is if you follow all the Heat Twitter, Heat culture, there's like all these things about like Heat culture that Pat Riley's done forever, and you gotta be on if you're not 15 minutes early or late, and we're starting stuff at 7:30 a.m. and that boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, right? All these like very like rigorous old school mentality Riley things. One of them, the only one that any of these guys don't follow is like I think you got to have below 6% body fat, and like Kyle Lowry doesn't do that. Like I think they'll make an exception. I like Kyle Lowry a lot. I don't think that that's a thing he's gonna do. He's got too much in the caboose.
By the way, did you guys listen to Jackie Mack on Bill Simmons this week?
I didn't listen to Simmons this week. No.
So speaking of the body fat stuff, she told an anecdote which I've never heard before, where apparently when Shaq was with the Heat, he would go in early and change the scales and the body fat measurements, which, like, my man, like, it's just guy after my own heart.
That sounds like something Shaq would do.
Well, and I don't think Lowry's going to be so sneaky as to mess with scales. I think Lowry is just a little bit chunkier. Like no one like looks at him and says he's not in shape. He just has always had a little bit extra butt and a little bit extra in his gut. Like that's just always what he's had. I really like this team because I think I'm going to really like watching them play. I think I'm going to really like how hard they play. I'm going to really like I don't know if it's going to be Butler, if it's going to be Lowry, if it's going to be 15 across the board for the first 6 guys. I don't know how they're going to win games. I feel like they're going to win a lot of games. If this team is going to make a finals run, it frankly is not going to be because the guys they signed this year. It's going to be because Bam Adebayo becomes that guy, right? Like, like at the end of the day, Lowry's great. I like Tucker. I like Markief. I think it's worth pointing out that's 3 dudes in the last 3 titles, right? You had PJ just won 1, Markief with the Lakers, and Lowry in 19. Like boom, boom, right? But at the end of the day, you've got to hang your hat on somebody. And I like Butler. Butler had a great 2020 playoff run and all that. But the guy's Adebayo. The Adebayo does things that other people in the league at his size can't do, and other people in the league with his skills are too little, right? Like he is a different basketball player.
And he's going to have his hands full. I mean, think about it. Giannis in Milwaukee, Embiid in Philadelphia, Durant in Brooklyn. If Bam Adebayo really wants to make that next step, he's going to have to take all 3 of those guys head on.
Well, and he's done it in stretches, right? In the bubble, he was the Giannis stopper. They gave him a gentleman's sweep, right? I just think that's where it really, like, the signings are great. It just comes down to Adebayo. And frankly, we've seen people carry this Olympics thing out and keep it rolling, and maybe that's really good for him, right? Maybe working out with the new team for the summer is a good thing. We talked about teams that we all thought did really well. My next hot tea, I'm just asking for hot tea. This is you are sitting with your boys in the back talking noise about the guy on the floor that can't play dead in a Western, right? Or whatever the case may be. Hot tea. The most disappointing team in the last 3 or 4 days of free agency has been blank. Start with Chris.
Pelicans. I think by far and away the Pelicans. I have no idea what they're doing this offseason. They're trading picks left and right for, like, I don't understand in the NBA, like, and the Knicks have done this too. They did this, using Porzingis to get rid of THJ at the time and Courtney Lee. Like, until you need to sign somebody, why move salary and give up picks? Like, once you have the guy ready to sign, great. Like the Steven Adams, Bledsoe deal, like you bring in another center who everyone thinks like, is going to be good with like Zion, or at least that's like the narrative that David Griffin's pushing. Like, it's not the case. Like, it's like, and then like, Devontae Graham, like, okay, but like, Lonzo, you have 2 ball dominant people with Zion and Ingram. Lonzo's great because he is such a good facilitator and such a good defensive player and can hit open threes. I don't know if like microwave scorers like Devontae Graham like are a dime a dozen. It just feels like for what the Bulls paid for Lonzo, they should have brought him. Pelicans should have brought him back, and like they may have cap room next summer, but like New Orleans has never drawn a free agent. Zion's also like a very like different guy, an interesting guy. Like I know for a fact in like the entertainment industry, like when he was coming out of Duke, he was supposed to have like meetings with major agencies, and he no-showed or sent his mom. Like he's a different kind of cat. So like I think they took a step back in a big way, and also like they gave up assets to trade for a star. So it's disappointing. And like, Zion has this body that we're all going to see, like whether, speaking of a guy who's not going to like pass the heat body fat test, like we'll see. If,
I do love the
yeah,
kid.
I love him. I love him too, and I'm glad that like him and RJ have talked about teaming up together again. But like at the end of the day, like we don't know how his body's going to respond year after year. Zion might have like a career that's like Brandon Roy, that's like 5 years, and like you're wasting him a little bit.
I want to knock on wood because that is very possible. I just hope it doesn't happen.
And Brandon was one of my favorites too. He was one of my favorites.
Point Zion, Roy was the man. And Point Zion is awesome, and I want to watch it for the next 20 years. It's just like it feels like they're wasting him right now.
And I think you're right on the Pelicans in that they clearly think Devontae Graham replaces Lonzo Ball in a way I just don't see. I question where they're going to. I question where they're going when they got Steven Adams. I didn't understand the fit of Steven Adams and Zion. So that's my take there. I guess they had to swap with Memphis. That was a little before free agency, but I don't know that moved the needle a whole lot either. Jamaal, hot tea, most disappointing team of the free agency period.
And see, Chris has stole mine because I was going to go New Orleans, but I will go with my other pick. I'm going to go with Dallas because look, they're coming off another playoff season where they didn't get past the first round. And I'm very glad they got rid of Carlisle because after they won that title in 2011, they literally did nothing after that. And so they're bringing Jason Kidd, but I'm looking at their free agency notes here. I do like the Tim Hardaway Jr. signing. I do like that one. He really showed out in that series against the Clippers. I do question Sterling Brown. Reggie Bullock, okay, maybe shooting, but you literally had Josh Richardson do that, but then you let him go. So I kind of question what Dallas is doing here, unless they're trying to wait for next year to try to get another star. But it just seems like with Zion, do not waste Luka's prime right now because the man is on a roll and nearly single-handedly beat the Clippers by himself, which I never would have thought would have happened. But after what I saw the previous year and now this year, Dallas really better be smart about their star right now because you do not want to get to a point where he is unhappy because you're not bringing players in. Because it's not like Dallas is a small market.
Dallas is not a small market in a lot of things, and frankly, in one way, is that Mark Cuban will throw ridiculous money at the Dallas Mavericks, right? Mm-hmm. They do seem to, in free agency, and in trades and things like that, have to pay like the mid-sized market tax. Like if I look at like Milwaukee when they had to give up that giant package for Drew Holiday, that seems like the kind of thing Dallas would have to do to get Drew Holiday as well. I would have initially said Dallas if I'd gone first on this, Jamaal, probably because they also in part live in Dallas. And so I hear this every day, but they were going to get Kemba Walker a couple years ago. And then they thought they were in the Kawhi Leonard sweepstakes. They're not. They thought they were in the Kyle Lowry sweepstakes. They thought they were going to pull in Lonzo Ball, and that was a great fit with Luka. Like they think that these guys are coming because Cuban throws money at problems and hopes it fixes them. And instead, they got Tim Hardaway Jr. for 4 more years, right? Like their big move. They drafted Luka, they drafted Dirk, right, 20-some years ago, and like they made a swap for KP. And I think it's fascinating that in the 2020 playoffs. It's like if we just had KP healthy and didn't get tossed out of that one game, we beat the Clippers. Yeah. And then the 2021 playoffs, it's like, well, if KP just didn't suck, we would have beaten the Clippers. I think that's an interesting, like, which player you get in there. I think Dallas thought there were going to be more fireworks than there have been. I don't think that Luka leaves before the second contract is over because you can get a lot of money in that second contract if you stay with your team. And he's not a fool. He's very young. He's got a long career ahead of him. Man, I think that one of these summers they really feel like they're going to get a star, and they're not.
Can I throw something by you guys when it comes to Dallas?
Yes.
Yeah. So, how would you feel about the offseason if they do get Dragic, which has been like the rumor? Do you think that makes it better? Like,
Well, no, because I think he went to Toronto on a sign and trade though.
But
No, it was his last year. He did go in the sign and trade with Lowry, but they can move him, and there's also buyout rumors.
Oh, okay.
The talk in Dallas is that there will be a buyout because of the fit in Toronto, and that Dallas is a leader to get him. If anything, because of the European connections with Luka, they're close, right? My thought there when I heard that first, Chris, the other day was that if it makes Luka happy, you have to spend whatever he wants, right? Like, because frankly, if that's the only move you make this offseason that makes Luka happy, that's kind of the only win you've got. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. is a fine bench shooter or whatever, right? But if that's the move that makes Luka Doncic happy, then that's the only thing you did this offseason to make him happy, so you kind of have to do it. I don't know that on the floor I feel like it moves the needle that much for them, though.
Yeah, I think it's really going to come down. The one person we haven't mentioned is Porzingis, and like, it's really going to come down to: are we going to see the Porzingis that was in the bubble that was looking good, or are we going to see the one coming off a meniscus tear? I think I feel a little bit better about their offseason than you guys do, because I do think Reggie Bullock is better than Josh Richardson for what they need. Like, Josh hasn't looked good in 2 years, and like Reggie, like, as a Knicks fan, man, like, the guy cannot dribble, but he can play. He was a feisty player for the Knicks.
Trey Young was all about him.
Yeah, he was kind of a co-leader with Randall, and like, the guy is a shooter. So, when Luka's doubled, Luka can find him and hit three. I think the Knicks have been burned by Tim Hardaway Jr. a lot, but I think what he's become in Dallas as this catch and shoot player is he could be in your crunch time 5 on a finals team. And then I think too, I guess we'll see how Jalen Brunson grows as a player. Like, is he going to be the regular season version or the playoff version? I just think some teams like the Knicks, the Mavs, and to a lesser extent when you look at the DeMar signing with the Bulls, this was the wrong year to have cap space.
Well, and DeMar's the guy that thought might end up in Dallas, and I at least thought it was an interesting fit because they have stretch bigs.
Yeah.
I guess my thought is that if the big win they get is Dragic, I know that Josh Richardson was disappointing in Dallas, but they did think they were getting Philadelphia's Josh Richardson, and I worry that could be what happens with Bullock. I do think the thing that Bullock will benefit from is Doncic is a gravity machine, right? He soaks up space. I think it's interesting. We hadn't talked about Boston much. I wonder what y'all's take on them is. I'd lump them kind of in this group as I thought there was a big move coming for something, and there hasn't been. The difference being they have 2 guys under 25 that are bona fide stars. So maybe they're just going to stay pat and move on. But especially in Brad Stevens' first year in the GM job, I kind of thought a move was coming. Am I being crazy?
I mean, just because there's a saying sometimes in entertainment when you're on sets, just because you're doing nothing doesn't mean you're not doing something. And I think that's kind of maybe what the Celtics are doing right now. Bradley Beal and Tatum are best friends. They grew up together. The Celtics
St. Louis guys. They're St. Louis is not an NBA hotbed, and they're both St. Louis guys.
It's so who knows? They can open a max slot next summer. So whether it's that or going all in on trading for a superstar, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with Marcus Smart and I think sometimes doing nothing is okay because you don't want to hamstring yourself if you have a plan for down the road. If they brought I think if they brought in Lonzo, is that much of a ceiling raiser? Or whoever the best player on this market was, Lowry might turn to dust in a year if they brought him in. So I just think I think it's okay that they didn't do much. I think it's a little addition by subtraction because it seems like Tristan Thompson was just a real jerk last year to everyone.
That's putting
and it's also, yeah, I wasn't sure if we're allowed to curse if Yeti would get upset, so I quickly changed it. And two, like I think like they seem to tune Brad out as a coach, so bringing in a new coach will help too.
Maybe we should like ding a Yeti when someone like ding like that. Well, that'll be our bleep buzzer.
Do that for future shows.
I guess you're right that the truth is that their bigger move maybe a year from now or 6 months from now at the trade deadline. I thought Brad Stevens going to take that job and go do something. And frankly, it's a team that I kind of think needs some shaking up. And instead, they've watched some of their bench guys leave. We're going to jump into a long two segment, which is going to be a little bit more on the free agency front. The long two, again, mid-range jump shot, that's the show. And that's a long two-pointer. Analytics nerds hate it, but that's how we do things here at the midweek mid-range. My long two prompt to you two is I want to hear two players that are under the radar that you think were good signings. And so basically, guys that didn't go to the Lakers, that didn't go to, I guess the Warriors didn't get a whole lot, but like guys that didn't go ring chase, guys that didn't sign for giant money, guys that you think are a little bit under the radar that made a big impact in their signing. Jamaal, do you have one or two? I'll let you start. Do you want to go with one guy? I'll go around and come back to you. Or do you have two guys?
So I do have two guys. I'm looking at Golden State, and believe it or not, I do like the signing of Otto Porter Jr. I think he gives Golden State another dimension, and I think another guy who can get buckets at different times during the game. If Steph he's either sitting out or just taking a rest on the bench, because once again, I don't know which Klay Thompson we're going to get when he eventually does come back. So I think that was a really smart signing on Golden State. And as we were talking earlier before the show, I love the Jeff Green signing that Denver had. I think it's a very underrated move. I think it will allow us to have better opportunities to go small, to play more small. I think it's really going to be interesting to see what Mike Malone does with that signing. I think that was a very underrated move.
I like both those guys. I like Jeff Green's game a lot. I think the game has kind of come to him as far as the movement of the basketball. Good calls on both. Chris, do you have one or two signings? And if you got one, I'll do another and come back to you. But
oh man, my two were the ones that Jamaal had. I have for years it was painful to watch Jeff Green on teams, and the way he has reinvented his game over the last few years. I'm surprised he's actually going to get more money, and I think he's going to fit really well with the Nuggets culture. And like, listen, if Otto is healthy, I think that's great. I think like some ones that weren't mentioned, I think Patty Mills to the Nets. To me, the offseason winners are the Nets. Overall, like anytime you put these super teams together, it's so hard to put a bench together. Bring Patty Mills in. Especially as Kyrie insurance for both his head and his body. A guy who has been his whole career, both here in the NBA and also internationally in big games. He is going to play a big role for the Nets. Also, bringing Blake back was huge. I think some of their other draft picks and signings have been great. For me, like I know we said like non Lakers, but and we talked a little bit about it before. When you have like Hall of Fame names like Dwight and Melo, they're great. But like, and they take a lot of attention away. But I really do think Malik Monk took a massive step forward this year. And I think he is going to, potentially be a 6 Man of the Year candidate.
I thought I was going to sneak in with Patty Mills because it was not the splashy one that other people said, especially because he's playing in the Olympics, right? And so as he's playing in the Olympics, it kind of hasn't, like, we haven't heard him talk about it, but I think he's a big signing for Brooklyn in a 6-man type of role. He's a clear playmaker, a clear winner. He's a Popovich kind of guy, right? I also think it's worth noting that like he didn't get a whole lot of big game minutes in San Antonio, but to an international guy like Patty, big game minutes in Australia are the same, if not more pressure. So Game 6 on the road, second round, he can play those fourth quarter minutes, right? Like I have confidence in a guy like that has done the international thing because he's done it so many times that he can translate there. I like Patty for them a lot because of what they'll ask him to do versus what he got. One that I haven't heard a lot of thought, and the funny thing is I totally poop on this guy all the time.
Okay. Can I guess where you're going?
I guess.
Lou Williams?
No, but I do poop when I'm
No.
I was gonna say JaVale McGee. JaVale McGee signed with Phoenix, and like especially because I would not have taken him to Tokyo for the Olympics. I get the sweet story with his mom is also a medalist or whatever. JaVale McGee signed with Phoenix, as much as I didn't like him on the Olympic team, is big to me because Phoenix had a real problem when DeAndre Ayton was in foul trouble. Like when DeAndre Ayton had to leave the floor, they were in trouble. I don't know how much JaVale's got left in the tank. I don't know how, if he's got the boneheadedness out of his system over an 82-game season or any of those kind of things. But he is a big, long, athletic guy that if it's just 12 minutes a game because Ayton is playing the other 36, I think that's good for them. I think that they really suffered from Ayton wearing down, having to play in this finals, guarding Giannis, guarding Brook even, and playing 40 whatever minutes, and having to have played 40 whatever minutes in each of the 3 playoff rounds before that. I think that wore him out. I think that also it's just not realistic to ask if anyone that's banging as a traditional big will do. I think JaVale helps them there just by being a big guy, right? Being a playable big guy. I don't know that I think he's great, but he's a playable big guy.
And you know what? Like, I'm the same way. Like, I've poo-pooed on him a few times, but like, truth be told, like you're 100% on the mark about he fills a definite need for them. And two, like the guy's been on multiple championship teams, and the Warriors like brought him back. So it's like,
right?
Yeah,
right.
And sometimes like that's such like a team of serious dudes. Sometimes like it's good to have a goofball in the room,
Yeah,
someone to ease up Chris Paul, right, Jamaal?
I agree. I was at an impasse because we had him here, and yet Malone really didn't use him all that much. And honestly, with the way Jokic was playing and he was getting banged in the post, we surely could have used him against Phoenix.
Well, and it's interesting that you say you could have used him against Phoenix, because that's now where he's at, right? So next topic is going to shift gears to Olympic basketball for the open container. And this is really just a chance to kind of an open talk. So on your Yetis, right, they get a little top. You can pop it off, and like anything goes in or out. It doesn't have to be like sealed. And when they are sealed, when the top is on, the cold stays in. When you let on, the heat, steam comes out. My open container question to you all is about Team USA, and what do you make of their chances? As we're recording this on Wednesday night, they play Australia in the first bracket play game very soon, like in the middle of the night. And so this, by the time you're listening to it on a Thursday, could all be for naught. But I do want to ask how you guys think going into the game, what their chances are. I think they've got a tough draw, if I'm being blunt. Anyway, they're in the quarterfinals against Australia in a few hours. What do we think, Jamaal?
I think they finally got most of the kinks out of their system. I think they're ready to go. I think Durant really needs to show if he wants to be the supposed leader he wants to be. This is the time to show it right now. So if they play to their potential, I think they take care of business.
Chris, you feel like it's a taking care of business kind of thing, or is there more to it than that?
I think it's going to be tough. They should still be the favorites. Anytime you have Kevin Durant, you should be a favorite. And they have a lot of really smart basketball players. I think as big of my favorite player in the NBA is Dame. It feels like he's had a little bit of a rough go here. I think the biggest issue that they have right now is this is such a brand new team of players. These other teams have been together for 3, sometimes 4 or 5 years. And I think that continuity is going to be a tough thing for the U.S. to overcome. But that being said, they have more pure talent than anyone, and they should still be the favorite.
And I'm sorry I misspoke because I was looking at the time of the game. They beat Spain in the quarterfinal. The Australia is a semifinal, and so winning that means you're getting at least a silver. losing that means you got to win a game to get a bronze. The opposite semifinal is Slovenia-France. I think it's interesting. I would have thought coming into this whole thing, Australia and France were the two teams that were like very competitive with the United States. And they're both in the semifinals. Slovenia is this wild card to me. I don't know how much of them you've gotten to watch. It is by every definition the Luka Doncic show. I mean, the kid is 17-0 as a competitor heading into tonight's, or I guess technically that game is at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Heading into those games, Luka is dominating the international stage. But there's one of him. France has one Rudy. Australia's got one Patty and one Joe. I still feel like if the United States just gets their head out of their bum, this ought to be their thing. I don't know. I feel a lot less confident in them than I do in the women's team. And the women also play Australia, also in a semi. Australia doesn't have Liz Cambage though, so that's a little bit easier road than it could have been. Have y'all watched the ladies at all?
Watched a little of it. I'm telling you, they're running almost roughshod through everybody. So it's hard for me to pick against them.
Other countries can't cover Asia Wilson and Breanna Stewart at the same time. I feel almost bad. They're playing China in I think it was pool play game, and it was the woman covering Breanna Stewart was at her USA logo. I was like, "There's no chance." Have you watched them at all, Chris?
Not much. I've seen a lot of the highlights, more just because, living on the West Coast, these games are early. But yeah, they are just running roughshod to your guys' point.
All right, Chris. On that note, I'm gonna let you go.
All right, guys. Thank you for having me. It's always awesome, Parker. Jamaal.
For sure, man. Thanks for coming by. Be sure to always pull up. Thanks for coming in, and we'll be sure to talk whatever big move the Knicks make in the next 10 days. I promise.
Oh God, that sounds horrible. All right, I'll see you. Bye.
That's funny. All right, Jamaal, we are wrapping up the show as we keep moving. Last thing, Wednesday Night Writes. What are you reading or writing? And I'll also include listening to, because I think that's typically how these things go. You read, written, listened to anything interesting lately?
So it's mainly just been on the free agency craze. I've just gone through the last couple of days. It's just amazing to me how it's always the first 2 days when free agency comes about, whether it's on ESPN or some podcast or even some article you sometimes write. It's just wow. And when those first 48 hours hit, I'm just once again, the NBA landscape has literally just changed in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, there's a ton of free agency, and it feels like every outlet's got different sources, which makes for confusing headlines sometimes. But
that's the fun of it, though.
Well, it's fun. It's hard to figure out what's going on, but that is fun, right? When that's fair. I was listening to an episode of Spinsters today. That's Haley Shaughnessy and Jordan Liggins talking. They were talking about free agency stuff. That they had really good show. That was a good episode. I think it's funny to listen to. So I don't know if I think Miami is going to win it all this year, but the Dan Le Batard show is based in Miami, and they certainly think so. So that was funny. A couple other things I've read this week. Obviously, always Nekias Duncan. And doing some research for a thing I'm writing about Miami, I read this guy named it was Brady Hawk, Tony Hawk, Brady Hawk, with a 5 Reasons Sports or 5 or something like that. It's a Miami-based outlet. It was good. And then I wrote some stuff on the Rockets, both the draft and the offseason signings and that kind of stuff. I'm writing anything on the Heat because I think what they're doing is interesting. I really, really want to dive more in with some tape on what the hell is going on in Chicago. I still feel baffled about that. And then if the U.S. loses to Australia in a couple hours and this whole thing feels moot, I'm sure I'll get something cranked out on that. Do you have a buzzer beater hot take for us?
I actually do. It's actually a pretty interesting one.
All right, let me pull this up. I had one earlier to see if I remember it. All right, so again, for those folks at home, 24 seconds is an NBA shot clock, so Jamaal gets 24 seconds to get off a take. He's usually very good. I don't want to say rehearse because there is some authenticity in it, but it does always feel like you are right under the thing. Are you ready to go?
Let's do this.
3, 2, 1, go.
So talking about Olympic basketball, I think there are two names that we really should pay more attention to. As a matter of fact, they're actually saying goodbye to the sport forever. A big shout out to Pau Gasol, and another big shout out to Luis Scola, a former Rocket. So for how much they've done for the game and for their respective countries, I think it's amazing. So I want to wish them all the best and all everything else that they do.
Yeah, I think that's it's weird to it was weird to see them play basketball, Gasol and Scola in the Olympics because they're older. And then it was weird to be like, oh, they're done playing. Like when they finished playing, I was like, oh, Pau Gasol's done playing basketball. Like that was just as weird as having seen it. All right, I had a thing. I can't remember. All right, here you go. 3, 2, 1. I think it's interesting to see how American free agents interact with American basketball players and how foreign free agents, international guys, Greece or Nigeria or Argentina, wherever, interact with other international guys. You don't see people flocking to Milwaukee, to Dallas, or San Antonio, or wherever. You see people flocking to LeBron, to Miami. And I think that's worth paying attention to. I got a thesis there somewhere working up, but that's the time went off on me. But international guys don't have the same kind of draw for whatever reason.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting.
Jamaal, tell people where they can find you and the things you're doing on social media, where they can get a hold of you if they want to talk about the big free agent moves.
So Twitter handles, as you see on the screen below, also on Facebook and Instagram as well. And as y'all know, I'm basically a regular guest here on the show. So like I said, anything talking about ball, let me know. I can talk it almost all day.
You can find, obviously, this show has its own Twitter and Instagram handles that are both at midweek, mid-range. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit like and subscribe and do those kind of good things. If you did not find it, if you found this somewhere else, we also have a YouTube page, the Midweek Mid-Range. My personal stuff is at Ainsworth512 on both Instagram and Twitter. It's at PAINSWORTH512 on Instagram and Twitter. I post the shows I'm on, the things I write. We have this show, and then I also have a audio only show that comes out on Mondays called FN Sports, where we grade sports things. We had our college football preview last weekend. Talked about grading some theses, basically hot takes about Alabama and the SEC and those kind of things. So check that out. It's always a good time. But again, I'll say it one more time. This show is the Midweek Mid-Range. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter. Hit like, subscribe, do all those great kind of things. Share with your friends. Tell everyone to watch about basketball. And as always, thank y'all for pulling up. Take care.